Welcome to the Golf Performance Show. My name is Cam Lancaster, your host. This week I'm talking about Moe Norman. So Moe Norman is an interesting character. He is one of the best ball strikers of all time. Arguably, I think maybe the straightest golfer of all time. Tiger said this about him, that there's only two players who ever truly own their swing, and that's Moe Norman and Ben Hogan. Jack Nicklaus also said about Moe Norman that he's one of the best ball strikers of all time. Now, if you don't know who he is, he's one of those mythical figures because he actually never really played on the PGA Tour. He was kicked off the PGA Tour and decided to just play in the Canadian circuit, and is one of the most winningest professionals of all time. Just wanted to say quickly a shout out to my sponsors. I want to say thanks to Bunker Threads for supplying me with all this amazing gear. I wear it when I play, I wear it when I coach, I wear it around the house. They're really good at making gear that's geared towards performance, geared towards the golf athlete. I'd also like to say another shout out to TaylorMade Golf. I play the QI10 driver, metal woods. I play P770 irons, MG4 wedges, and I'm playing a reserve putter. I mean, there's not much more to be said about TaylorMade. To me, they're the best equipment brand in golf, and they're making equipment across all spectrums for all different types of players, and they're doing it the right way. So let's get right into it. I pulled a lot of this from an interview with Jack Cudial at Pine Needles with Moe Norman. And Mo went on a lot of these interesting rants and talked a lot about, some of the things that he did from a mental standpoint. So what I mainly want to do today is talk about Moe Norman's mental side, the way he looks at the game, and then also just a few pieces of his technique. I personally don't teach the single plane method. There's a guy named Todd Graves that he coaches it on YouTube, and he's got an academy that really teaches a single plane method. I like to take elements from Mo's swing and really teach it to people, like his footwork, like the way he talked about grip pressure. And we'll kind of go through that in the end. So stay tuned to the end if you want to learn a little bit about Mo's technique. I mainly want to talk about what you could learn from Mo from a mental standpoint, because the way he looked at the game was, I don't think there's many golfers that look at it this way. And he was just very blunt in the way he would put things out there. And it really, I think, always kind of strikes a chord when you really listen to what he's saying, because when you listen to him, it almost sounds like a crazy person talking. I think there's definitely some crazy in there just based upon his childhood, what he went through with the accident, and then just his personality in general. But he was very smart in terms of golf, like probably one of the highest golf IQs out there. So an interesting thing about Mo is that I think his internal driving factor to be a great player, his family pretty much never cared about him playing golf. They never really even saw him hit a shot, which is pretty crazy to think about. And I think that can really help any golfer. Like if you have someone in your life that maybe doesn't believe in you, or isn't really enthusiastic about your golf goals, I think you can use that as internal motivation. I mean, obviously you don't want to look at it in like a hateful way, but I found for me too, like I never really had that figure come along in my life until I had a boss, and there's a former boss who really didn't, he looked down on my golf habit. Like he thought it was a big distraction to me at work, and it might have been, but this was like 7-8 years ago, and I was that really kind of put a chip on my shoulder to want to get back into golf and want to start coaching golf and want to get better at my own game. And I really think that was one of the driving factors for me to get a lot better in golf. So, if you have someone in your life that really doesn't believe in you with your game, or is hard on you about your golf game, use that as an internal motivator. It's kind of like the way Michael Jordan would look at his opponents or anyone who would doubt him, right? So Mo, really believed that, and he said it in a funny way, that 87% of the game is knowledge, and it's the 6 inches between your ears. And what he meant by that is, it's not about, well, for sure it's about, controlling your emotional state, your mental state, but so much of it is about what you can learn in the game. So I think if you can become a sponge and learn more about your particular game and what makes your game tick, that's where you want to be. So it's not about understanding all these different concepts, all these different models, all the different science around the game. It's about really understanding why your swing isn't working, because your swing is going to, be very custom to you. Like there's certain things that I do in my swing that I've never seen in anyone else's swing before. Like I tend to dip a little bit forward and keep a short backswing and route the club out to in. And I do all these things that are very custom to me. I've never seen anyone swing it like me. I've never seen anyone swing it like the next guy or the next guy. So it really is on you to understand your swing on a deep level. So absorb as much knowledge as you can. It's not, he really believed it wasn't about the technology. It's not about athleticism. That's a benefit. That's a side thing. But really what it comes down to is how are you going to approach your game and how are you going to learn more about your game so you can get better over time. Talking about Mo's attitude on the golf course, he was very much a believer that there are not many golfers who have a killer instinct, and there's many golfers that have a defensive attitude. Now, I do think developing that killer instinct comes with just sheer work ethic and putting in the time and really just accepting the fact that, hey, this game is very difficult and you got to put in the work to get to where you want to get to. And that defensive attitude to me comes from not really owning your skills, right? And Mo was famous for hitting 500, 600, 7 golf balls a day, probably on an average day 400, we don't have that time for sure. But if you can just stack consistent habits day to day, write yourself out a 20 to 30 minute plan. Even better yet, I have an ebook for you down below that you can download, and there's some knowledge in there on TrackMan, and then also a practice plan that you could take a look at. And it's really just going to help you to understand a simple to follow system where you only have to spend about 30 minutes a day. So check that out. So Mo was big on, and this kind of goes back to owning your game versus, thinking about other things outside that might not have a huge impact, the internal versus external motivator. So he believed that the best golfers were internally motivated to go to where they wanted to go with their game, and golfers who struggle and maybe spin like a top are externally motivated. They're always looking around at others and other coaches to try and figure out what's going to work. And there's definitely, you want to take a certain amount of knowledge from other people, but you really want to just take the time to understand your game. And I think a simple way to do this, I covered this last time, is just keeping simple statistics like, how many times are you putting your ball in the fairway? What are your greens in regulation like? What is your proximity to the hole? You could even track, like Tiger would track this back when he was in his prime. I think Stevie Williams would actually track it for him. Like, what was his shots like with his 5-iron, his 6-iron, his 7-iron, track club by club, his proximity to the hole. And then he would know that, I got to work on my 5-iron and my 9-iron. So getting very specific on how you're measuring your game can really teach you a lot about where you need to go with your game as opposed to just going off of a gut feeling. Next thing that, Mo talked a lot about winners and losers. And this is, again, he really likes to draw a lot of comparisons between extreme good and extreme bad. So, winners play golf on autopilot. They really see where they want the ball to go. And then losers see what they don't want. And, I think the worst thing you can say to a playing partner is bringing up hazards, like saying that the water's there, or, there's trees there, or this is there, I don't want to hit it there, or this hole is something, is a hole that always gets me. I really want you to, next time you go out and play, even if you're just playing in a simulator because it's a little bit colder right now, only think about where you want the ball to go. Like, I wanted to put it in this little left portion of the fairway. I want to put it on this sliver on the green. Like, get very specific about where your targets are. Your mind will go where your attention is going. And if you just make it a habit to really focus in on where you want that ball to go, it's really going to take you a long way. Another thing that Mo did too that I think is genius is, and I think a lot of this was to do with how many shots he hit in his life. He put less value on everything, so very, very low value. And his mindset was like, it's just another ball. Go grab another one and tee it up if you lose it. I think we put too much value on shots, especially certain shots that maybe scare us. Like, I know for me personally, it was always that first tee shot where I really hype it up and I get super nervous, and I still do to this day. But what I have found over time is, putting a low level of importance on every shot. I think Tommy Fleetwood said something about this too when they asked him about, do you feel that extra set of nerves in majors? And he said, for sure I do, but I believe that the first shot I'll hit off of the Open is the same one I would hit at home in Abu Dhabi when I'm just relaxing. So if you can assign a low level of importance to every shot, something Bob Rotella talked a lot about too, Dr. Bob Rotella, it's gonna really push you forward, right? So, he really believed that, you have to be sure of yourself before winning a prize. Stuff like hope and fear. He talked a lot about that, where it was like, he would say that most golfers just play on hope and fear and hope and fear. And I think if you have a plan for your mental game that will take you to the next level, that is something that's really important. And a simple start to that too. Like, I always work on this with my online students with like a mental game questionnaire. We take them through a whole program. But a simple thing you can do to start, one thing I always recommend is make a voice recording of all the best shots you've hit with each club in your bag. So you'll have 14 different voice notes for each club in your bag. Freddie Couples did something similar to this. I think he might have wrote it in a journal. So when you pull out your driver, you're thinking about the 7th hole at your home club under, a club championship pressure. It was a dogleg left. You hate dogleg lefts, and you hit a perfect little draw over the corner. And then you pull out your driver in that pressure moment, and you think about that shot. So if you can associate every club in your bag with the best shot that you hit, then that's perfect to me, as opposed to what most people do. And I get this a lot in my in-person lessons when I say, okay, now it's time to hit the driver. You can almost just feel the anxiety come off of a golfer. I've been there too myself, where I'm dreading hitting a certain club, so I'll actually avoid it. No, I don't want you to avoid it. I want you to go into the trouble, hit the club that's causing you the issue, because you're just going to get more time with it. I'll never forget this experience that I had. And I might have shared this before, but it's always worth sharing again, because I think it was a huge turning point in my playing career. I was playing at a course where I had a random caddy assigned to me, and this caddy forced me to hit driver on every hole. And I was doing terrible with my driver at the time, like hitting it 50 yards left, 50 yards right. I just couldn't control it. I was probably averaging 2 to 3 fairways around as about a 3 or 4 handicap at the time. And the front nine went terribly. I'm like, hey, we got to change the game plan up here a little bit. But I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing with it. And then by about the 13th hole, I had about 5 drives left. I caught one right in the center, and I'm like, oh, okay, that felt different. And then I carried it to the next hole and the next hole. And then all of a sudden, I hit 5 fairways in a row, and I carried that through the rest of the year. And I carried that momentum all the way into where I'm at now, where I consider my driving to be the best part of my game. So, you can't shy away from that moment. And that was something that Moe Norman was big on, right? I think a big thing Mo talked about too is the willingness to be lonely in the game. Lee Trevino talked about this too, is that you have to be willing to be lonely to get better at golf. And it's the hard truth of it. It's an individual sport. It's not a team sport. And, if you really want to push your game to that next level, you have to just be okay with maybe sacrificing a little bit of time elsewhere to put that time in alone. I find the best work that I do is into my net at home, in my attic with my little putting green setup that I have. Those are the moments where I really learn a lot about my game, and I can take it to the golf course. When I'm around people and distracted with my game, I know I'm really not improving, and I think we can all attest to that. The moments we get alone on the range or alone on the golf course, especially on the golf course, is when we learn the most about ourselves and the most about our game. Mo believed also too, and I'm just bouncing around here. There's a laundry list of ideas that I have here, so maybe pay attention, and by writing out a couple key points that you feel like you're missing in your game. Mo believed, and I'm really big on this too, because I went down every technical rabbit hole there is about 5 or 6 years ago when I was educating myself to be a golf coach, and it really helped me now. Like, I know how to discern what is a good thing to teach someone and what is a bad thing to teach someone. But he really believed that golfers are being taught too many mechanics. There's swing models, and there's there's TrackMan, and there's 3D mapping, and there's force plates, and there's that's just scratching the surface. There's hack motion, DeWiz golf. There's all this stuff that we're learning. And it's great, and I think it's going to push the game forward. But if you get too much knowledge in any great player, and you're going to ruin that player pretty quickly. And that's what I notice about when I coach the golfers I work with in the NCAA, or my mini tour golfers that I work with, is if you give them too much, they're going to chew you up pretty quickly, and they're going to lose trust in you because they want simplicity. And I think the simplicity aspect works really well for beginners and works really well for professional golfers. And you're probably somewhere in the middle, where I think simplicity is always best. And there are a couple of years where I was really complex with golfers, and I could see that I was making about half my golfers quite a bit better because they were very invested, and then the other half I was maybe at times hurting them because there was just too much complexity going on. So, I want you to commit to improving 1 or 2 things in your game, and just focus on that for about a 1 or 2 year period, and then be with a coach who can kind of rein you in and keep it there. And if that coach, wants to get into the next thing and the next thing and the next thing too quickly, and you just slow it down and say, hey, I haven't mastered this yet. And you'll know when you master a technique and you can move on to the next one. Basically, you'll know when you've mastered it when you can look on video and see your swing, and the thing you've been trying to do is happening without you actually consciously trying to do it. Okay? So, some things about, Mo talked about how to get along with yourself in anger. He really believed that there was no place for anger in your game, and people getting pissed off with themselves. It just does absolutely nothing for you. And I firmly believe that. And take it from someone like myself. Like, I have broken clubs before. I have done things that I'm not proud of on the golf course. I've broken an iPhone before. And, I tend to be a pretty chilled out guy. Like, most of the people around me say, like, I'm a pretty relaxed dude. I'm pretty happy-go-lucky. But when it comes to my golf game, I can be a lunatic. And I really learned it 2 years ago. I won't go too much into the specifics around the story because it's I don't want to expose too much about this person I was playing with. But he basically told me a tragic story about his life. He lost a close person to him, multiple close people to him in a short amount of time. And he basically told me, he could see me getting a little bit angry. And this is a total stranger too. And he said, like, this is the best day you're ever going to have, is being out on the golf course. So why would you get angry? And I'm like, it kind of snapped me into place. It was almost like, cold water being thrown on my head. And I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, there really is no room for anger in the game. And since that day, I've really committed to not letting myself get angry on the golf course. And there will still be moments for sure I'll run hot and get pissed off. But you just got to understand that when you're out there playing, it's the best part of your day, and anger is doing nothing for you. It's just compounding things. Like, there are a couple golfers that when they get angry, they play a little bit better, but that's at a very high level. Like, I would put like Henrik Stenson or Tiger Woods in that category. Anger is something that is only just going to detract from you playing your best golf. This is a big one for me that Mo talked about. It was the difference between like defensive golf and shooting 59 golf. There was a stretch where Mo Norman kept shooting around 59, kept shooting course records. I think he has something like at least 40 to 41 course records, which is an insane number. I think that's got to be a record. I mean, obviously it's hard to keep that record, but for him, it was premeditated. Like he saw the shot happening before it even happened. And this is a big thing that I hear from great players is they see the shot before it happens. So if you can develop some sort of simple process to see your shot before it happens, even if you've hit 50 shots in a row where it just hasn't gone your way, visualize something, like whether it's a dotted line going towards the target, whether it's like a shot tracer you would see on TV, whether it's, like thinking about the sound of your ball landing. Like the one I really like is seeing the white shot shape in the sky, just like you'd see on TV. And I'll try and visualize what it would sound like when it hits the ground and hits that fairway really firm and rolls out. There's every once in a while too, you probably have felt this where you're like from 100 to 80 yards and you hit a really high shot and you can hear it land. Like think about stuff like that on the green. Okay, so we'll go into, I really want to keep this short and sweet today because I want it to be things that you can take away that are very concise for your game. And so, maybe take 2 or 3 of those things that I've given you there and write it out and commit to doing that when you practice and when you're on the golf course. I want to go a little bit into Mo Norman's technique. He had a very unique swing. He had a single plane swing. What I mean by that is if you look at Bryson DeChambeau, where his arms and his shaft are all in one line, that's more of a single plane, where Rory would look, conventional golfers look more like this, where the arms are here and then the shaft line is right there. That single plane method just allowed for him to keep it on that same plane. I wouldn't particularly recommend that if you really want to learn it. Check out Graves Golf, but you would have to get your clubs adjusted and get up set up in a certain way. I want to kind of talk more about what Mo felt and some of the things that he was really kind of always working on. I think the one big thing that I have put into my game and I put into my competitive golfers game, and I try and really push this on my amateurs that I work with, is to do a lot of one-handed training. So, hitting a bunch of shots with your left hand and then switch to your right hand, hit a bunch of shots that way. Hit a shot with your left hand standing on one foot. Hit a shot where you're gripping it with one hand and you have your eyes closed. Obviously start it out very slow. Like if you can just hit a 10-yard chip shot, that's great. And then expand it up to 30 yards, 50 yards, 70 yards, all the way to a full shot. But that one-handed training is really working your coordination. There's a story that Mo talked about. I might be getting the timeline wrong, but from the ages of like 14 to 19, he spent 5 years hitting tons and tons of balls with just his left hand on the club. And Mo is very famous for having a very stiff and locked out lead arm, and at impact it looks perfect, right? And that kind of lends itself to his grip strength that he had. Like he believed that you should be holding the club like a vice grip and not soft like a noodle. Now a tighter grip pressure, what it's going to do for you, it's going to stabilize the club face, so it's going to help you hit it straighter, and it's also going to add more speed. It'd be like, think about doing a very heavy deadlift. Like let's say like a 500, 600 pound deadlift. If you grip that thing soft, you're not going to get it up off the ground. You're going to have no control of it. So you have to have a death grip, a death squeeze on it. So I might be getting these numbers a little bit wrong, but a PGA Tour player is going to apply about 130 pounds of force to a grip handle where an amateur only applies 70. So if you get a tip from a pro that says, hey, soft grip pressure, well, they're just on a completely different scale. If anything, you should be tightening your grip pressure up. Like I know for me, when I do any speed training, I grip to the point, I have a practice driver that I use, and in 2 months I'll wear the grip out because I'm squeezing it so hard to stabilize the club, and it allows my arms to go faster and the body follows. The body always follows the hands, right? Mo was big on getting a proper release, so shaking hands with the flag stick, feeling like the trail arm goes through like this, and that was something that was specific to him. I think if you struggle with misses to the right, that feeling for you will quickly get it going to the left. Think about it if you're a right-handed golfer hitting a draw. The high hands, no plane changes. I think it's definitely something that if you've really struggled with a conventional swing and you struggle with early extending and jumping up at the ball, experiment with it. Like it doesn't hurt. I find for me with my wedges, I get more into a single plane action, and that really just helps everything stabilize. Chipping too. I know, I think it's Dan Grieve talks about kind of standing the club up a little bit more, and that just helps kind of keep everything, the wrist nice and stable, right? It's worth practicing at least. Another thing that Mo was famous for was how wide his arc was, and he would set the club, it almost looked like 5 to 6 inches behind the golf ball. John Rahm does this too with his driver, and what that really does for you, in my opinion, is it shallows you out very nicely, so it gets you a nice wide arc. That's going to get you more speed and more shallow naturally. there's all this talk about shallowing and dropping the arms in the slot. And that works for certain golfers, but I think for a large amount of golfers, it actually screws them up quite a bit. Mo would do this drill where he would put a penny, think about just a little coin 3 feet behind his ball and then 1 foot inside. So 3 and then 1, and then a coin about 2 feet out in front of his golf ball. And he would just try and visually see that club head going over the coin. Now, what we know about motor pattern production is that if you can have a motor pattern that you produce through, or that you're able to develop through your eyes, visualization, that's important. So Mo had these things down before we even had the ability to measure what were proper methods. So if you do that simple drill there, you're definitely gonna get more shallow. I know that's a really good one to do for your driver, where you set the club about 5 inches behind it and then feel like it goes over that coin on the way back and then through on the coin, and you're really gonna get a nice shallow plane as you come through, okay? Probably my favorite thing that Mo did, you can look at like Moe Norman impact on Google Images and just look at his impact. He had feet that really, stayed grounded and rolled forward towards the target they were banking, as opposed to, jumping up and standing up. And he believed that a lot of amateurs are jumping and going up and down too much, and there's too much, vertical up and down. That's something that's a bad habit for me in my swing personally. So I'm always working on making sure I'm really staying grounded as I come through. I don't think it ever hurts to hit some balls where you actually just keep your feet on the ground and try and rotate. Now, you have to be careful. This is something that Graves teaches a lot, but I think if you have lower back problems, it can cause some issues. And it definitely isn't something that's going to create a ton of speed for you. Like definitely the Rory McIlroy look of jumping at impact, or Justin Thomas jumping at impact with their driver, is going to create more speed. But if you're looking for accuracy, which in my opinion, most amateurs and most golfers should be chasing accuracy before speed, that's a really easy way to keep everything nice and level and grounded. So you should feel like your feet roll forward and your heels stay on the ground for longer. You can look up Moe Norman swing and just watch his feet. They're always kind of doing this and staying down. And then the final thing that Moe Norman did too was a shorter finish. Like his finish looked like this pretty much every time, almost looking like his elbows were to the target. And you look at guys like, to me, a perfect example, that would be Tommy Fleetwood, Bryson DeChambeau when he hits a lot of his wedges. There's a famous, in my opinion, a famous video of Tiger Woods when he won the Zozo Championship, his last PGA Tour win. And he hit tons and tons of cut off little finishes. And I think that just really controls your wrist angles. It gives you a better sense of feeling of the club face. Like I know for me, anytime I'm working on backswing stuff, I shorten up my finish. And what I typically see, I don't see a club head speed drop. And I see this with a lot of golfers I work with who have trouble with controlling their wrists, is we don't see a club head speed drop when you shorten up your finish. So if you look at Mo on both ends, he was very short and wide. And I think that's going to help you quite a bit. If you really kind of throw that club over your back and get it wrapping around, the wrap finish, it looks sexier. Like you think about Tiger Woods in '97 with that beautifully wrapped finish, or Michelle Wie with the crazy wrapping finish. It looks better, but is it functional? And I really don't think it is more functional for the average golfer. If we strive to be more like Moe Norman or Bryson with his wedges, or Tommy Fleetwood in general, I think you're going to have a much better time controlling that club face, which at the end of the day, golf really does come down to controlling the club face correctly. So that's it for Moe Norman. It's a very simple, short podcast. I really wanted you get some actionable practices that you can. As always, like I mentioned, take 2 things from the mental, take maybe 1 or 2 things from the technical, put them into your game, work on it slowly, work on it into a mirror, really give it time to integrate, and I think you're going to see some success with it. Also, too, check out my ebook in the link below, like I mentioned before. I'm going to talk to you about simple stuff on TrackMan that you can learn, like face angle, club path, attack angle. These are the 3 biggest numbers to me that can have the biggest impact on your game. Face angle and club path is really going to teach you about accuracy, and attack angle is going to teach you about how to properly strike it. And then with that ebook too, that's totally for free. There's a practice plan in there too. And then at the end, I put a little speed protocol in there for you. You can also book a call through that link as well to just learn a little bit more about my methods and ask me a couple questions about your game. So next week, we're going to talk about some habits in golf, and just in general, maybe go a little bit off of these historical figures and talk about some actionable things that you can do in your game to keep getting better. Thanks so much for listening. Again, subscribe, share with your friends, follow along on Instagram at Lancaster Golf Performance. I've got more content coming like this.